What's up guys, how you all doing? So I want to talk about today the iPhone 10. The worst thing about the iPhone 10 is that everybody calls it an X, which is very irritating indeed. And even when you turn around to them and you say, no, it's a 10, not an X, they say, no, it's an X, I've seen it on the paper. And then you try and explain to them that an X is a Roman numeral for a 10, and the conversation goes on. And still some people can't grasp it. But if that's the worst thing about the phone, then I guess we're doing quite well. Anyway, so many people have said to me, please give your opinion about the iPhone 10. So that's exactly what I'm gonna do. Now, first of all, I'm rocking the black version and I've put the D brand dragon skin on the back of it, and I think it looks absolutely phenomenal. Now, one thing that I do not like about this phone, it is ridiculously slippery. If you try and use it completely without any kind of like textured skin or a case, you're definitely going to drop it. Unless you've got some kind of rubber hands or something like that, you are definitely chucking this phone on the floor, and that is why I opted for the skin, as well as the fact it looks beautiful. I did get the white one first of all, and then I swapped to the black one and gave the white one to my wife. So yeah, I really like the black version. Now, let me first of all talk about what I consider to be the negatives outside of the naming of the iPhone 10. So this is not a negative, but this is what I thought would be a negative, which is the notch. Now, we've all seen the notch. Now, when that first came out, I was like, that is the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen in my whole experience of all smartphones. But I wanted to give it a fair try, and I've got to tell you, it makes absolutely no difference whatsoever. It really doesn't. You forget about it completely within a few hours of using it. And after a couple of days, and especially a week, you just get totally used to it, and it's just a non-thing. It's a non-problem. The second thing that I thought was going to be a huge problem with the iPhone 10 was Face ID. When Touch ID came out for the iPhone a few years ago, I think it was on the 5S, I loved it. Especially when it came to the iPad as well, I absolutely loved it. It changed everything. No more passwords. When you pay, it's all a fingerprint. Plus it was kind of cool technology as well. I loved it. So the idea of taking that away, to me, was extremely worrying, I've got to tell you. But Face ID is fantastic. It works so much better than I thought it would. And I love the fact that it's just completely seamless. You know, when I go to my phone, I don't press anything. All I do is I just swipe up and I'm in. There is no pressing anything. There's no holding your finger on anything. There's no certain place you've got to touch or anything like that. You just physically hold the thing, swipe, and you're in. Without that, that's it. You're just in. And one of my big worries about the Face ID was when you're using Apple Pay, which I use all the time. I very rarely even carry a card anymore. I just use Apple Pay on my phone or my Apple Watch. Now, I thought that when you held it over the thing, which is usually flat on like a counter in front of you, I thought that you would have to kind of lean over it and try and look. But the way that Apple have implemented it is, you first of all, you look at the device, you press the power button twice in a row, and instantly it comes up and it allows you to then pay for it. And then it doesn't matter what angle you do, you just touch the phone down and it's good to go, ready to pay. So there is no issue around that. And in fact, it's easier because when you do Touch ID, sometimes you've got to hold the phone at a weird angle to the side or on top of a card reader and get your thumb on there or your finger, and it's all kind of a tiny bit awkward. This actually makes it significantly better, and that was probably one of my biggest worries. Face ID for me works 98% of the time, I would say, flawlessly. Now, the time when it doesn't work for me is when I've got a pair of mirrored sunglasses which are polarized, and it doesn't work through those sunglasses. But there is an option that doesn't require your attention for Face ID to work, and I have that off all the time. So it's slightly less secure, I would imagine, but it works in every situation. Even when I've got like a hoodie on or a cap or mirrored sunglasses, it just works. And yet at the same time, even for my dad, my son, my mum, my wife, all these different people that I've tested it on, they still can't open my phone. So yeah, it's still ridiculously secure, definitely secure enough for my liking, but works flawlessly. So those were really the things that I was concerned about with this phone that have turned out to be non-issues. My main real issue with this phone is the display. Now, the display is phenomenal. It's definitely, I'm pretty sure it's the best display I've ever seen. It's obviously the AMOLED display, and it's just phenomenal. It really is phenomenal. You feel like you're actually touching the icons when you're doing it. The screen is so close to the front of the glass, and it's only when you put it next to like an iPhone 8, for example, you realise how much better it is. It's so much brighter. It's just a phenomenal screen. But my issue with it is that it's too small. Now, Apple kind of con you a little bit, because when you hold this up to an iPhone 8 Plus, the length of the screen is longer than the iPhone 8 Plus screen. So I imagine the diagonal would be as well. So Apple are saying it's a bigger screen, but the width of the iPhone 8 Plus screen, or 7 Plus, however you want to look at it, is significantly bigger, and the overall screen space that you get is better. You also lose a whole bunch of features as well because of that. Things like tabs when you're in landscape mode, certain other things as well that work really well in landscape that you just don't get on the iPhone 10 because the screen is smaller. So that is fairly annoying to me. I wish they'd have brought out an iPhone 10 Plus. That would have been perfect. I want like an extra bit of length on my device. But yeah, other than that, the screen is awesome. I'm not quite sure why we've still got these black bezels around the outside, ever so slight kind of black bezels just around the outside. I wish it was like the whole screen, a bit more like the Galaxy Edge, although I'm not really a fan of the really curved corners, but they've obviously done that for a reason. Maybe it's just not possible, who knows. What else? The cameras, the telephoto one now has optical image stabilization, which is a huge improvement, and also a better aperture as well, so it works better in low light. That is an improvement. The other camera is pretty much exactly the same. Something that not a lot of people talk about on this phone is the speakers. The speakers on this are seriously loud. They're a vast improvement over the iPhone 8 and the 8 Plus. They really, really are a huge improvement. And something else that I particularly like about this phone is the battery. It's small. Oh no, I think it's smaller than the 8 Plus, I think, but it's bigger than the 8. So I think it sits somewhere in the between. I could be wrong. It might be bigger than both, but it lasts really well. It doesn't last as well as the iPhone 8 Plus. That one definitely has a better battery life than this. I think about 15% from what I've worked out, but it's a great battery life for what is actually a very small form factor phone. I know there's things that are much better in terms of battery life, like the Huawei Mate 10 has got a ridiculously good battery life, but it's a big phone. You know, the Galaxy Note, again, big phone, big battery, but for a small phone, this thing's actually got quite a decent battery. The overall worst thing about the iPhone 10 is the software. iOS 11 and 11.1 were an absolute joke. They were by far and away the worst iOS that I've ever used in terms of bugs and glitches. And for a company like Apple, with the ridiculous amount of R&D funding and money and people that they've got, is unacceptable. And luckily, the recent release of iOS 11.2 has cleared up the vast majority of those, and it's significantly better. The battery life is better, the performance is better, the frame rates are better. It's just better all round. So they've done a good job, but to me, that should have been the first one, and there's no excuse for it being so bad in the first place with the basically unlimited resources that Apple have got. So all in all, the iPhone 10 is a huge success. The last thing I want to tell you about as well is the gestures, because you know you're concerned about losing the home button. It's so much more natural to swipe than it is to touch, and when you go back to a previous iPhone or any phone that's got a home button, it feels completely antiquated. I love all the new gestures, the sliding between apps. The only one that I don't like is the one where you use the multitasking and you've got to kill apps, because you have to slide up, hold it, and then swipe off. And I know loads of people say, oh, it doesn't make any difference to performance, you know, the usual kind of crap that you hear. But the fact is, I like doing it lots of apps become unstable after periods of time, and I just have it as part of my procedure to get rid of them every so often, and I find it gives me personally a better user experience. But that process to do it has got an extra step, and I don't like that extra step. I understand why they've done it, but I wish there was a better way to do it. And in fact there is a better way to do it, and that is just to have, like Android, a clear all button, or kill all, or whatever you want to call it. Just give us that button, Apple. Please give us that goddamn button. That would make such a huge difference. Now, the money side of things, it's more expensive than an iPhone 8 and also an 8 Plus. Is it worth it? To me, as a technology junkie and someone who actually uses their phone as a business device that earns the money, yes, it's definitely worth it. For your everyday person that just wants the latest and greatest, most of what you get is actually in the iPhone 8. Is the extra couple of £100 or dollars worth it? I'm not too sure whether it is or not. You've got to kind of justify that in your own mind. It's a lot of money for a phone. I know a lot of people who haven't bought this phone because it's become so much more expensive. So we'll have to see how that pans out in the long run. But kind of, this is like almost a generation 1 device now. The difference between this and previous ones kind of makes it generation 1. So I think next year we'll see some serious reductions, and we'll see this phone in the same form factor with the similar kind of screen, but in lower cost versions. So yeah, I think that will improve. But this year definitely was a big jump, and you guys will have to kind of justify that for yourselves. Anyway, I have waffled on for way too long. I've got to say a huge thank you to all of the hugely positive remarks and comments that I got from my previous video, saying that I'm back and I'm going to just do more kind of me talking about things that I enjoy. And the comments were fantastic. They really did make my day. So a huge thank you for that, guys. And I am back on the horse, so they say. When I say that, back on the horse, a lot of people say, "What are you talking about?" There's a saying that says, if you fall off the horse, get back on. That's where it comes from. I'm getting old. That's it from me. Peace.